I think the Winx film is a good way to start. It will be studied in schools in Australia.
Winx is last. She'll have to come past the 17 of them. But here she comes, right over the top, Winx. But she gave us a massive fright. I wanted it to be right.
Was how much people have enjoyed it in the cinema. There's been tears, there's been laughter, there's been loads of cheering every time she wins.
All-time highest prize money earner in Australia, and also she has won 33 races in succession.
You know, I think that's a really good question, and I guess honestly, I think I was looking.
The people's horse.
She had the will to win, but she also had the will to live.
Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about very special horse and very talented and special director. As you know, we have many legend horses in horse racing industry, and one of them is Winx. We heard many stories about it, and we watched her races, but it's the first time her life made a documentary. And today I'm gonna I welcome Janine Hosking, director of A Horse Named Winx. Welcome to Janine. Welcome to my show.
Thank you for the invitation.
And before asking my questions about Winx, I would like to introduce her to you first. Could you please, Janine, start by telling us a bit about your background as a producer and director, and what led you into filmmaking, and how did you become involved in the world of horse racing?
I guess the shorter answer is I started out in journalism as a journalist, a cadet journalist in a small country newspaper, and then I went on to be a reporter for the news, but I always felt that I wanted to make documentaries. And so after years of wanting to do that and just doing shorter stories, I did one documentary about a woman and her bid to save her orphanage in Cambodia. And it went very, very well all around the world. So it was a very good starting point for me to pick subjects that I personally am interested in. And so the subject matters are very wide ranging, and somehow all of that has led me to telling the story of Winx.
And how did your passion for storytelling and filmmaking eventually led you to create a documentary about Winx, such a legendary horse?
Well, in Australia, she became an icon, if you like. People that didn't know much about racing were suddenly watching racing because of her. And one of those people was my mother. And my mother started to tell me about this horse named Winx. And I was, of course, aware of Winx, but I hadn't really been watching the races. So I watched maybe her last 5 races. I wasn't thinking of making a documentary about her. But my mother kept persisting after Winx had finished, saying, why don't you make a documentary about her? And I then read Andrew Rule's biography of Winx, and Andrew and I decided that we would collaborate to do the documentary, me as the director and him coming along. He eventually became the narrator and writer of the film. So we worked very well together, and I think without Andrew's knowledge, I would have been, it would have been a more difficult task for me to take on.
As you mentioned, she is not just an iconic figure in racing, but also popular in culture, also in society. How do you think it happened?
I think it's that the great horses, particularly, I just can only talk for Australia really, but I'm sure most people around the world have heard of Phar Lap. It's sort of like a modern day Phar Lap story, if you like. It was like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale, as we say in the film. Most people saw it as a fairy tale, that she just kept winning and winning and winning, and as she kept winning, more and more people were going to the races. I think when I looked through all the footage, which was a very big job. There were a lot of children going to the races. They wanted to see this great horse. So it's a bit like the very famous horses, your Black Beauties, the ones that step out in a movie. That was what it was like for Winx at that particular time.
And you also mentioned about her victories. I would like to give some statistics about her. And she's a retired champion Australian thoroughbred racehorse. She earned 26,451,175 million Australian dollar in prize money. Winx has won over 1,100 meters until 2,200 meters. She won many races each meters. She won. Winx won 25 Group 1 wins. It's a world record. And Winx, the all-time highest prize money earner in Australia. And also she has won 33 races in succession. It's incredible history.
I don't know whether we'll ever see it again. 33 races is extraordinary. And since her retirement, there have been other horses that you think, oh, they're very good. People are looking for the next Winx, but inevitably, because it's racing is difficult. You can't win all the time, and the jockey's only human. The horse is an animal that can have good days, bad days, and so that's what makes what Winx and her team did an absolute miracle. We look at it now and you think, how did they do it? But a lot of thought and expertise, where it's not just luck. And
in my channel, my subscribers, some of them are in horse racing industry, but most of them are not familiar with the industry. But a legendary horse like Winx are gonna introduce them our world, and I'm really happy. Your documentary is gonna do it as well worldwide. That's why I'm really happy as a fan of Winx, also a fan of horse racing industry, But during the documenting the life of legendary horse like Winx, you must have its some challenges. What were some of the key difficulties you faced while producing and directing the film?
I think one of them, when I look back now, we had a lot of footage we had to collect. I was worried about raising the budget for a film like this is hard. So that was a big thing. The Australian government gives filmmakers grants, so I was able to apply for grants. So that helped. But we had a very big ambition. I wanted to see it in a cinema. People had seen Winx on television, on their computer screen, but I wanted them to see what she achieved like it was you're going to the movies, and that meant the great music on it, and filming where she is now, as well as going back and looking at the races, analysing the races, talking to the jockeys that competed against her, filming the horses that competed against her, the trainers, and then talking to Team Winx, the people that looked after her, nurtured her, and of course trained her so well. And that took a lot more time than I thought it would. I think when I embarked on it, it was during a racing season. And so getting access to the trainer, Chris Waller, and jockey Hugh Bowman was very difficult, because they're very, very busy with their new crop of horses. So I think I was slightly maybe very annoying in the beginning. I was always there going, ringing, saying, can we do an interview? Can we do this? Can we do that? But I'm glad I persisted, and I think they're very happy with the film. But I think it was probably what I was wanting and needing for this sort of film was probably more than they thought they were taking on in the beginning. It's a feature-length documentary. It's a 2-hour film. And they were as important as the horse. Obviously, Winx is important, but you needed to know Chris Waller's life. You needed to know what was going on in his mind as he was trying to get these races. He didn't know when he started out that they were going for 33 in a row, and the pressure builds. Hugh Bowman, the jockey, particularly important, obviously, to interview. But then there were minor people that they look like they're minor in Winx's life, but they're incredibly important. The strappers, the vets. So I needed to, the track riders, track workers. So we needed to get all these people on the film. So, the hardest thing was coordinating all their time.
Yeah, but you're so lucky because as a woman, you have a great passion, and also you really wanted to make this movie. And as a woman in both filmmaking and an industry traditionally dominated by men, what were some of unique perspective or experiences you brought to the table when creating this documentary?
I think that's a really good question, and I guess, honestly, I think I was looking for more the emotional core of a story, the emotion of the story. And that doesn't mean everyone has to cry. It could be great joy or really opening up about, I always knew it was going to be a film about pressure, about as her fame builds, big decisions had to be made, particularly by her trainer, Chris Waller, who I personally believe is an extraordinary person, not only extraordinary trainer. He was very open and very raw in this film. So many people have just really commented on how open Chris was, and that's a great generosity to a filmmaker. He'd been interviewed a lot about Winx, but he decided this was the time to talk. I was lucky to work with a really good racing journalist, Cameron Williams, who Cameron and I sat down and we worked out what we wanted to ask Chris, and Cameron went and did that interview with us filming, and that interview went for 6 hours. Chris really wanted to do the interview in one go. But I think that was great because he went from the beginning of when he first meets Winx to the end, and he really just lived and breathed it, moment by moment. And so I feel really extraordinarily lucky for that. And Chris's wife, Steph, was also very generous. There was a huge price to pay for the fame, for the extraordinary athletic achievement. The flip side of that is the dedication, the time spent away from family, all of those sort of things. So those were the female perspective, if you like, that we were probably asking questions like that more than a sports racing journalist would ask.
And I think one of these are the surprising stories which you heard during this filmmaking process.
Yeah, I'm not from a racing background. I owned ponies as a little girl, so I loved horses. And I guess that was another thing. I know what it's like to love these animals. So I summoned up that to go, let's get that across to the audience. Once I saw that was genuine, of course, I don't just make these things up. When you could see how much the trainer, the owners, the jockey, the strappers loved this horse, and the big decisions that were made around the horse, it is almost like a love story, if you like, as well as a great sporting achievement. So I guess, the surprising thing for me was I knew it was going to be a story about pressure, but the amount of pressure that everyone felt because she was becoming, by race 30, as you pointed out, she wins 33 in a row, 29, 28, all of that. They were wondering, she was getting to 8 years of age as well. When do we stop? When will she lose? And it became, her legacy was very important to the team as well, and to make sure that she didn't end her career with an injury, to keep her safe. So all their decision making was about Winx, and the pressure that was on them, I knew it was there, but it was a big surprise just how much pressure was there, because she was very difficult horse in the barriers at times. And so a lot of those races were won where she's laid out the barriers and your heart's in your mouth watching her. And of course she overtakes the field. So she's coming from behind, which also I think made her extraordinary for the crowds to watch. So she has you on the edge of your seat a lot of the time, and then she just pulls it off. The other surprise, I suppose, from a non-racing person was the jockey, Hugh Bowman, explains in great detail how, with track work, how much Winx loved her track work, but almost was always pulling, wanting to be across the finish line, and always saw that finish line. And the strappers would say sometimes she could almost just, work out, she would just run those races or run that track herself almost. It was that she loved her job, I think, as Candace, the strapper, says. Winx really loved her job. So that was, for a non-racing person, I learned that you can't make even a great racehorse run unless they're happy, unless they want to race. And I think Chris Waller and his team had a unique and beautiful ability to make their horse happy, Winx happy, so that she was happy to win, happy to run for them.
Is it maybe that's why she has a unique habit, winning the race and be happy during the race? It was maybe, yeah.
I think so. I think as the pressure builds up and we're getting to race 33, I think looking at the footage, the people that are most stressed are the trainer and the jockey and all the other people in the stable. Winx herself was not a stressed horse. So, but even photographers would say on those big race days after she's won, she would look down the barrel of the camera as if she was posing. I think that last race, which had, I think, nearly over 40,000 people went to the races to watch her last race, you feel like she's just gazing out, looking at the crowd before she goes into the barriers, and at the end, it's extraordinary. Like, she knows that this is important. And I know that sounds silly, but when you see the footage, you'll understand what I mean. It's quite amazing.
Definitely, it's amazing. And you had many interviews during the documentary process. And from a jockey's perspective, what was it like to ride a horse like Winx? What they told you? And did jockeys report any specific qualities that made her easier or more difficult to race with compared to other horses?
I think Winx would not have been Winx without her jockey. I think her career was mainly, I know her main jockey was Hugh Bowman. I'm just trying to recall. I think he did 30 of the races, maybe. Yeah, they were a team, and in fact, sometimes Winx didn't race at all if Hugh wasn't available for whatever reason. So they were the right team. He was very cool under all this pressure, and I found him a really interesting person, Hugh, to interview. And once one of the owners, Debbie Capita, said there would be no Winx without Hugh Bowman, and he seemed to be so cool and collected. He grew up in the country. His father was a stockman. He is almost like out of a Western movie as well. They're terrific characters. I don't know if I could ever get this team of people again in one film. But Hugh would just say she's just so professional. He told me that he didn't used to pat her because she didn't like that sort of affection from him, particularly when he's riding her. She'd pull away. As she became famous, someone wrote to him one day and said, why don't you pat her when she wins? So he thought, I better start patting her, even though he knew she didn't particularly like it. And one of the races, he goes to kiss her on the nose after they've won, and she pulls right back and gives him a blood nose. I think it was the last race. So there's some funny little stories they would say. She didn't actually crave a lot of affection. She liked to be in the box by herself. As she becomes famous people would like to go and visit her in the stables, and she would not like to see them. But if it was someone with a disability, children, she'd put her head right over the box and let them pat her. So when we were filming with her, I think in the first couple of times we didn't have much luck. She wasn't interested. She'd just walk away from us, and she was pregnant. And I thought, what are we going to do about this? But one day we did a very really great filming session with her, and she was really sort of letting us pat her, and she was looking down the barrel of the camera and showing off and everything you would expect of your leading lady. So, yeah. But I could see that side of her, was that she wouldn't suffer fools.
And how long all the total process take? Yeah, all the filming process. How long did it take?
The filming process was quite strategic, but spread over, I think, maybe 6 months, mainly because of people when they were available and when we could film with Winx herself. The structure of the film is like if I was telling a film about you, I might start with the structure of you as a baby, going through to the first time you were educated and all of those sort of things. So with Winx, we were looking at going right back to who's her mum and dad, who bred them, what do they remember about her as a foal that was different, and I got lots of really interesting things about that. I think the stud master says his Irish man called Peter O'Brien, who really had a very close relationship with Winx's mother, Vegas Showgirl, and they were all very excited when this little foal was born. The unusual thing about her was that she was born in daylight. Most foals are born at night. Most foals struggle to stand up. She got up very quickly. And he has this great line that he says, Winx knew she was good from 10 minutes of age. So it's moments like that, like, wow, we've really got to tell the story of her being a foal. It was written in her foaling report that she got up very quickly. So there's proof of this. It's not just people making up stories, that they said she got up very quickly on the notes. Another one of the foaling majors said, look, she was very difficult to catch as a little foal. She was already running away from her mum and running out pretty fast in the paddock. So you're getting a sense of her personality. That was very important for me to capture. Another important area to capture was with the man who was the very first to ride her, talks about how professional she was, how she seemed to understand what was needed of her straight away. She wasn't resisting the process. So the making of the star was interesting. It wasn't all straightforward, though. Like all good stories, there's always hurdles to overcome and drama and problems, of which that happened in Winx's career as well. So it's the narrative structure. We go right through to her career and then beyond what happened to her after that last race as well.
And it's obvious that she has a unique spirit. It's not just about her abilities on the racetrack. She has also her spirit, and she shows her emotions. That's how she create bonds with jockeys. I believe beside the performance on the racetrack, the spirit of the horses makes them legend. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think she has something very unique, obviously, about her in terms of winning, but she just has this aura about her. One of the owners talks about the first time Winx wins a Group 1 race, she felt something shifted. She said she was proud of herself. She looked her in the eye and she felt that there was something different there about this horse. But as I said, there were struggles along the way. I think it took a very patient trainer to go, okay, she'd won her first 3 races, and then I think she lost 4 or 5 in a row, and they were starting to think, maybe she's not as good as we thought. And so you needed a very patient trainer, and you also needed patient owners to give him the space to work with her.
And a horse like Winx, she is very competitive. It might be difficult for her retirement. And does she still maintain any of her competitive behaviors or habits in her day-to-day life?
Yes, I think she's a bit of a queen from what I've heard in the paddock. She's a brilliant mother, and it was interesting. One of the strappers said to me they were worried that she wouldn't be a very good mother because she was such a competitive horse on the racetrack, and in fact it was the opposite. Beautiful with her foal, And so that was sort of nice side of Winx that everyone got to see, and we got to film with that, her first foal. Absolutely beautiful to do that, and we filmed her trainer going back to see her and to spend some time with the foal as well. So she's due to have her next foal any day now. So that will be in the news. That the first foal that we filmed with was sold for $10 million. So I think that was a world record. So, and she actually had the same attitude as her mother, looks exactly like Winx, and had a little bit of attitude like she knew whose daughter who she belonged to.
And actually, in Turkey, that's where I live, we have a similar story, like a legendary horse. His name is Bolt Pilot, and his life made a movie. And it's very similar story, and it's really affected the interest of horse racing in Turkey. The Bolt Pilot is a legendary horse in Turkey, and he is jockey Halis Karataş. You may know him because he's a legendary jockey in Turkey as well. The movie was made about their story, how they reached these achievements, and there was a love. Because the owner of the Bolt Pilot, the horse, is the wife. She is the wife of the jockey, so there's a love story in as well. So, I mean, this movie rapidly changed the perspective of horse racing in Turkey.
Right.
What do you think after completing the documentary? The perception of Winx or the world of horse racing is going to change? If so, in what way?
It's hard to know. So the film's just been in cinemas around Australia. It's actually still doing a cinema run. It's also started to be on one of the, just in Australia at the moment, streamers. Now, the initial audience is usually people that love racing. They're going along. They are Winx fans, and so they're falling in love with the film. It's very emotional for them to watch. There's a lot of humour in this film as well, but it's also very emotional. I mean, Winx, actually, one of the big surprises for me personally was just how close she came to dying after her career, actually. So to the fans, it's strengthening her reputation as an icon, and people remembering why we've loved her and continue to love her. Getting new fans, yes, but they have to be convinced that it isn't just about racing, that it's a unique, universal story. You're going to learn a lot of things about people in the film, and I think in its own small way, it is helping. I've had a few people come to me after screenings saying they weren't sure if they wanted to come and see the film because they didn't like horse racing. They thought it was cruel. And then afterwards, I remember one in particular, a lady who was fairly hostile when I first walked in and said, I just don't like horse racing at all. Afterwards, she said, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. I can see that these people really love this horse. So it opened the perspective that way. And I think if people are willing to be open-minded and come along and watch it and not have a closed mind, I think they will learn a lot about how these horses are treated and respected.
Is it your message to one who are not familiar with horse racing and with Winx story?
I would like people to have if you're not introduced to racing, but you're sort of interested or you want a more rounded opinion about horse racing, I think the Winx film is a good way to start. It will be studied in schools in Australia. And when I say studied, it's studied in this thing of what was it, just like your questions, what was it about Winx? Why is she important culturally? One of our greatest athletes. At one point, I think a newspaper named her Australian of the Year over humans. So she was considered, the film's considered important enough for people to look at and study one of our important athletes, and also the accomplishment of particularly the trainer, Chris Waller, and being able to, and Hugh Bowman, the jockey, in being able to be this trio that gets the 33 wins. So, but I would like people perhaps, before they just have an opinion about racing, to watch and just get a better education perhaps about it. I mean, I don't have all the answers about the industry, but I know what I saw when I filmed Winx's story. I know what I saw when I've actually seen people, the emotion, not just about winning, but the emotion connected to the horse. It isn't just in Chris Waller's stables. It happens in stables all around the world. So, you know, I'm hoping that it'll help people just to understand it a little better.
I am sure it will. As a horse racing person, I'm really glad to watch documentaries and films like A Horse Named Winx, because you are introducing our work to people who are not in the industry. And as you mentioned, Winx is far away from her victories. There is a very emotional bond with her audiences and with people. I'm really, I can't wait to watch the film. And I think it, as you mentioned, it will be in Australia, and I hope we can watch it in online platforms in near future, maybe Netflix, maybe any other them, because I can't wait to watch it. And do you plan to create more films on legendary figures in horse racing industry? If so, could you share any details about it?
Well, what I could possibly share with you, we're working at the moment on an international release of the Winx film, and we might try something a little bit different with the international side of things, which I'll keep you up to speed with that. But we hope to take it to different countries, but also so that it's available to people all around the world. We were thinking of perhaps doing virtual screenings, which it'll take probably be after Christmas break. We'll just have a little break and then we'll work out how we're going to do that. It'll be something quite unique to get people around the world that are interested in knowing this story, maybe to be watching at the same time. Yeah, so that's something. So I'll keep in contact with you about that. Yeah. In regard to other stories, I think there will definitely be other horse stories, maybe other animal stories, inspiring stories. I think the beautiful thing that I've seen personally about this film was how much people have enjoyed it in the cinema. There's been tears, there's been laughter, there's been loads of cheering. Every time she wins, there's cheering. And that really, I've never really seen that in the cinema before. That was great. So I'm hoping that we can experience that around the world, particularly those that aren't as familiar with the Winx story. I think they'll even get more out of it. But I also feel like I've been pretty spoiled in doing Winx's story. She had a very unique group of people around her. I don't think I'll ever really meet people necessarily with that sort of combination, again, that were willing to be so open with the story. So I don't know. I can't say never. I would never do another horse story. It's just like I feel like, you know, when you've reached Everest and you've reached the pinnacle, I don't know whether I'd bother to go back and do it again, because I've been lucky enough to, you know, be privileged enough to be invited into this very special world, if only for a short time. Yeah, so I don't know, but I suspect it'll begin and end with Winx.
I hope so, and I'm really glad to hear you are working on a special project for watching us to the film. Yes, please, I would like to hear it and tell how they can do it, all the audiences, and for my subscribers. Janine, thank you so much for your time and for for this interview. And do you have any last message for horse racing people?
No, except thank you for your interview and the thought that you've put into the questions, and I'm really looking forward to you seeing the film. So we'll organise to have these screenings, and I'll let you know when we can maybe organise for some other people to talk to you when the time comes. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you for watching us. We had a lovely conversation with Janine Hosking, the director of A Horse Named Winx. Winx is a legendary horse in our industry, and we can't wait to watch the movie and watch the film. And thanks for watching us, and please subscribe my channel, like the video, and if you have any questions, please write it down on the comment section. See you on the next video. Bye bye.